This conference will now be recorded.
So, welcome to my segment with the amazing Holly Gage. She and I are doing this remotely, and we apologize for any glitches or mistakes. We are human and we're new to this. So, take it away, Holly. Holly, tell us a little bit about your background in metal, clay, and jewelry.
Hey, Michael, it's sort of nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Um, I've been making jewelry since I was 13. Metal clay was not even a thought. So I have a pretty heavy duty metalsmith background, but when I found metal clay, it was just like big switch, I never have to really solder again. I have a nice little history of melting pieces, on occasion. So I love metal clay, although I didn't love it in the beginning. Um, I think it was more of my ability or lack of ability, and everything was thick and klutzy. And once I learned how to dry refine it, that's when it all changed for me. But in the beginning, it was not a love at first sight, and then I became pretty obsessed.
Okay. What was your first exposure? What kind of class did you take?
Believe it or not, I saw it in a bead shop, and I thought it was like a polymer clay that was like a silver toned polymer
Okay.
clay. And so I think I started to look it up, and I have to like go back. Was there internet then? Because in the
Right.
beginning, it was like the forms were very different. We were all like teaching each other. So there
Yeah.
wasn't really major classes, although Tim McCray did put out a book and
Uh-huh.
read that. And I remember my first try at bending something. Must have been PMC original. Of course, my prongs broke right off. So
Right.
um, yeah, it's come a long way
Yeah.
since then. I mean, like the iterations of clays and companies and options and all that stuff. So Project X sounds pretty exciting to
Yeah.
be replacing one of the bigger players in the field.
And so, kind of dovetailing off of that, what have been your early experiences in projects with Project X since you got your hands on it?
Well, I only had a little bit, so I haven't had a ton of experience, but um, I tried to do as much as I could in a small piece that I
Okay.
could. And my goal was to check out some of my important features. Like, I feel like any clay should rehydrate really well, because God knows I'm never out of the gate and done. It's like squash,
Right.
squash, squash, start over, squash, squash. So it had to rehydrate. So it hydrates beautifully. It
Uh-huh.
takes very nice texture. And
Uh-huh.
because of the shrinkage, which is for me, it was like 27%. Now I
Right.
understand it might change down the line a little bit as
Right.
the product goes into bigger production, but the detail on my piece came out really nice.
Nice.
Um, and the working quality is very sturdy. It's not
Yes.
like you still can't drop it on the ground and expect it to come up spot free, but does have a sturdiness. So to me, different clays do different things, and I think that this would be a good clay for building structures, where some it's a little too soft, and then like your walls are not quite as crisp and clean
Right.
as you want them to be. So I think structural building uh, would be good. But
Okay.
you want to see a picture of the piece I
I'd
did?
love to.
I popped one of Chris's opals in there.
So this is the fire in place opals that you're known for.
Yeah, hold on for a second.
Yep.
Okay, can you see that?
I can. There it is. That
I
looks
made
amazing.
I made a teeny little video with weird music. So yeah, that was a quickie. But basically, what I wanted to do is check out the snakes. Can I
Yep.
make good snakes without it, you know, cracking, crumbling?
Right.
So those worked out great. Um, I hand did the textures on the sides and the surface. So I think the clay has a little bit of
Yes.
a harder surface. So also when you sand it, immediately start to see the silver. So
Right.
it's definitely a harder surface. But one
Right.
of the other things that I was looking for in a good clay is I like to finesse the surface, wet
Right.
like a healing tool and finesse the surface and it really does that beautifully.
Yes.
Um, and it makes a good self slip. And what I call self slip is when you want to put two pieces together that are more of like a lamination technique versus a joint,
Right.
not a bezel attachment, but when you're connecting two pieces, I'll wet the top side and the bottom side, wait 2 minutes, and then bring it together, and it makes a good self slip. So the
Right.
water hydrates just the surface, and then the rest of it stays firm and crispy when
Yeah.
you're put together. So it makes a good self slip.
Yeah.
But
That piece, the piece you made is amazing for a test piece. I think you really pushed your abilities and your skills to show what the clay can do, and it looks like you really found it works well with your style and a lot of your signature surface texture and negative space and stone setting. So can you talk a little bit about the process that you went through to make the piece?
um, well, let's see. I'll show it up while I'm talking about it, since it'll sort of remind me of what the heck I did at the time that I did it. And it wasn't that long ago. I just got this stuff. So anyway, this is actually part of the technique I teach, Peruvian style jewelry, where I'm making snakes and little dots, little circles, and then I put them on the surface very randomly, and then I press it with a snake roller. And with this, I textured the background with a rotary tool, um, with a pointed diamond drill bit. So sort of just like stippling with your rotary tool.
Right.
And then with these lines on the side, um, I used a pointy conical file.
Right.
So yeah, I think for surface texture, you can do it. In extreme textures, it might be a little hard of a surface to be doing a lot of carving, but this kind of surface texture worked out pretty well.
So you like your diamond bits in your flex shaft. That's definitely your go-to with this material. You think that's one of the better ways to get some interesting surface detail that's not a texture plate or a texture sheet.
I don't know, not necessarily. It's been my go-to recently because I recently had some neck surgery and my arms were like useless for a while. And so when I first had the pain, I was using my flex shaft as a way of making textures, hammer because I like carving a lot. I really like to,
Right.
and it afforded me an opportunity to carve and try. Like you're getting different kinds of textures than I do when I carve,
Uh-huh.
but um, I'm loving the process because it's really therapeutic. Like I initially thought about doing it, and I thought, no, I'm a klutz. These things are going to go flying all over the place, but it doesn't. I can
Uh-huh.
slow it down to the point where it's very controllable, and I have never felt like I'm going to lose my piece in the air. So it's been really good, and I've got a klutz proof everything, so. So for that to be working for me was a good thing.
Nice. And then how did you build up the bezel for the opal?
Let's see. Let me put that back up. So these are the fireplace opals that Chris is carrying. I did a bunch of testing to get them to work. I mean, they weren't designed for this kind of thing. Nobody had done it. So I was doing months and months and months of testing. But anyway, for this one, I made like a donut out of the metal clay. And then I made I used a diamond, not a diamond drill, but a diamond burr to
Hmm.
make a seat for the opal. And I wet it, I popped the opal in. The thing is, what I'm finding is this, with the shrinkage being so much, I think that you got to watch your size,
Sure.
or 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 you're going to get some cracking. But
Right.
this was a smaller size and it seemed to work okay. But I knew with the shrinkage that I should keep the bezel a little bit on the looser side, so I
Right.
gave it a little extra room. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
And then, how did you find the firing and finishing went for the piece?
Oh, just fine. It took a really nice finish.
Uh huh.
Um, yeah, I liked it. I
Good.
once it became metal, it seems very much like because the consistency in the clay stage is smooth and creamy. It's not like you've got to get rid of some grittiness that some clays have. So the surface was just fine to finish.
Excellent. And then, you said you liked its ability to rehydrate. What did you do to rehydrate the clay?
I had a completely dry piece. I put it in saran wrap, and then I squirted it, and then I just poke it every once in a while and whatnot.
And it just came back the way it was fresh out of the package. That's excellent.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. That was good because I've had clays that don't rehydrate. To me, that's sort of a waste. Like if you can't really, like it really limits what you can do with it. Um, I've taken dried clay and you just can't. So I'm like carving into it and making something,
Sure.
of the lump, like a almost like a deductive carving where you
Right.
have the lump and then you're just carving around it and something pops up.
And then, what types of future projects do you see yourself doing with the Project X clay?
Um, I do like to build three-dimensional forms, so maybe something like that, something
So more of
three-dimensional.
your whimsical animals, are you thinking?
Yeah, maybe, or like a box or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to try all the other clays, of course, like
Sure.
you know, the
Right.
960s, 925, see if they have any different consistency or whatever have you.
And you feel like Project X holds detail really well and pulls detail very, really well?
Well, yeah, because you've got that shrinkage factor. So
Right.
anything that you did big, the details nice and crisp and tiny. So that really works out well. Um, if you want highly detailed pieces and want people to look at it and go, how'd you do that? So itsy
Right.
bitsy, the fact that you work bigger is nobody needs to know.
Excellent. And then, so I know that you just came back from some pretty intense surgery due to ergonomic issues. Do you want to speak about, ergonomics with working with Project X? And
Okay. I don't know if this is a clay specific question, but let's
I
see.
think they just also want to get to know you a little bit more as an artist. It's not all Project X. We want to do a little bit about you and what your journey and odyssey has been, both with the metal clay, but also in your personal life.
Well, as I said earlier, I've been making jewelry for a long time, and
Right.
apparently I haven't been sitting properly. And once I mentioned it to other jewelers, I can't tell you how many popped out of the woodworks and said, my arm, my elbow, my back. I had 2 discs replaced in my in the back, and I have 2 that are still bulging, but they said it's not bad enough to do anything right now, and I'm going to try to keep it at bay. But bottom line is, a lot of us aren't sitting very properly. So I could show you around my studio a little bit.
Sure, that'd be great.
Let's see. I wonder if I could. Now this is new to me to do this, so I never set this up. Never mind. I'll have to take my camera around. Okay. So anyway, let's see if I can carry you around a little bit. Okay. So I have. I'll give you a view. So this way over there is all of my tools and stuff, and I'm travel accessible, so I can just grab one of those boxes and put it in, because they're all very organized with before, greenware, finishing, So anyway, it's very portable. So my studio is very portable. So anyway, this bench is a little bit higher than where I was just sitting at, and I do all my dirty work there. And this bench is your typical jewelry bench,
Right.
but I like to carve there because it's higher yet. And so basically you're doing a lot less of the looking down, where you can be right level with the desk. And one of the things that I was using when I carve are like a hockey puck and a little thing. A lot of people do that because that's what's available to us. But the thing is, when you're working with this, your whole arm and your wrist are the strange angle, so instead of just bringing up the item, you bring up your whole desk area.
Right.
So underneath here, I have a couple boxes that, if I'm lazy to turn around, it takes my whole arm up instead of just my wrist.
Okay.
So that's helpful. So I also have an adjustable chair. And so I'm in a little circle here. So when I'm facing this way, that's where I do a lot of my teaching and typing and stuff. But I got myself a separate drawer because laptops are not ergonomically correct.
Right.
You ought to be at the top of your screen, and your hand should be at a 90-degree level. But the thing is, we're not built that way. It's either or. So I got the keyboard separately so I can be at the proper height. And so my chair goes up and down. So when I turn around to carve, I can do that. I wheel over there. I can do I could saw, I could basically all my finishing and stuff.
Right.
But I got a good little spot here. It used to be a garage, and we turned it into a room. And so it was a 2-car garage on that side of the studio. It's not that messy here, so I could show you that too. Anyway, here's my organizational things.
Right.
And the neat thing
I'm
is,
jealous. I wish I was that organized.
well, you could take individual drawers out and put drawers in for what you need for that particular class. But I have it all figured out, so each box neatly fits in my bag to go traveling. So this is Chris's area, and that's where you were actually sitting there when Chris was showing you some rock cutting.
Yeah.
So,
I enjoyed it very much. It's a great thing, and probably my next expensive hobby to get into.
yeah, well, it is expensive. And then I have my kilns, like all of my, and then that's my hot area. So if I want some soldering, I got to remove one of the kilns, but it's all on metal surfaces and things like that. So, and that's our little lounging area. But anyway, it's a comfortable place to be. And then when Chris is here, we're rocking the music, and Chris is usually the DJ, and and every once in a while he'll drop an opal on my desk because I've been good that day or something. But
So,
so anyway, I was very involved in writing this article because I thought to myself, if that many people
right,
are are hurting, and if I could write something that would stop them from hurting or really think twice about what they're doing. So it's a pretty very comprehensive article. I talk about stopping and and stretching throughout the day.
sure.
Um, get these neck aches or back aches. These are the little things telling you to get up and move.
Absolutely. Yeah, I tend to be like any other artist where if I'm in the zone, if I didn't have a family requiring sustenance and a dog requiring walks, I think I would work until I fell down, and that's not good for your body. It may be good for our brains from a creative standpoint, but if the body's going to fail you, it doesn't matter how creative you want to be, you can't work. So
Oh,
it's good to hear that you've started to sort of hone in on what you need to do to keep active through the next phase of life and artistry.
well, I'll be honest. I learned the hard way. I this problem started right after MCAS, and I don't
Uh-huh.
think I did anything at MCAS, but it's like an accumulation, and so
Right.
it's years of you know experience and studying this stuff, and then I also, when I wrote the blog on my website, I consulted with my physical therapist and then an occupational therapist. Just I didn't want anybody to come back and say, "Well, that's not right." So I really researched to make sure it's correct. And still, I we all like get involved and we get closer and closer to our work, and
Right.
it's that looking down, even with your cell phone. Everybody's looking down at their cell phone, and I'm learning to bring it up. So
Right.
even everyday things, I'm questioning it all, the way I'm watching TV and, everything. So
Sure.
I'm trying to bring my shoulders back and keep my neck straight and aligned and all that stuff. So it's
So,
a learning experience.
are you looking towards the future with any ideas of things that would inspire new projects for you?
Um, Boy, that's a tough one. I mean, seriously speaking, um, prior to this happening, I had to stop for a couple months, and then while this, I'm supposed to be recovering for another um, 7 months. So I'm taking it easy, and
Okay.
so the inspiration hasn't been coming as quickly, knowing that I can't get in here. But there are a couple greenware that I have tons of half done work from classes. So I do have a project a whimsical critter that I'd like to finish. And
Would you care to show it to us?
um, Bits and pieces, but I could try. Let's see. So the eyes are what makes this baby work,
Oh, wow. That's
when
magnificent.
but then it's got these legs that are supposed to sort of swing, and
I
then
love it.
I had these little feet that they're going on last because they're saying break me.
Oh,
So the
those are
feet.
fantastic.
So this has been
Okay.
sitting for a very, very long time now, and so it needs to be done. And believe it or not, it reminds me of my grandmother. I don't know if she'd be happy about that or not, and she's not around to really complain, but I'm going to give her a shopping bag because my grandma used to come full of like gifts and things like that in a big shopping bag.
How
So
wonderful.
yeah, she
I
was
can't wait to see that finished. That's going to be amazing.
it's going to be, it's going to be bigger than most, but um, sort of fun. Yeah, I really
Nice.
like the whimsical critters. They really give a voice to the funny side of me, which I really hadn't been able to show. So,
Well, I'm curious to see what you do moving forward with the Project X with your whimsical critters, because it'll be interesting to see how you start with something that seems like it's going to be so large, but with 26% shrinkage, that definitely brings pieces down to that realm of, okay, it's sizable but not massive, right? So it'll be curious to see what the new clay drives in terms of design and
Hmm.
execution from you.
Well, I always say this, every time that you get a new tool or a new piece of equipment, it will change your work. It will influence your
Sure.
work. I tried the I guess it's the Curio or the Cameo. I don't know which one I have because it's in the box. But anyway, I tried it and I took one of my typical designs and did it on there, and it has a different look about it. Not bad, not good, but different.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in one of my design classes we talk about um, how technology and things like that influence our work, and we don't think of it as metal clay artists that we're changing anything. Some people think, oh, only the greats are doing that. Every single one of us are doing that because um, when you die, your kid gets it, or your aunt has a piece, or somebody bought a piece. It ends up getting curated into shows, into antique shows, things like that, and people read it according not only to the design but the materials that were used at that
Sure.
time. So we are a part of history, and even Project X is going to be part of history, but all the other plays will also be part of history in the things that we're doing with it. Every time we come up with a new development, like putting glass in it and putting opals in it and things like that, we're changing. We're I don't want to say trend because I hate that, but each generation is bringing something else to the table, and
Sure.
so we influence each other because we see what each other are doing, we learn techniques, and then we make it our own and that kind of thing. So it's really interesting, I think, how it will affect how we're affecting the jewelry industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're no longer sort of this offshoot of craft people that are, whacking away at metal clay with rubber stamps and cutters and throwing a hole in a jump ring on it. I mean, we are true artisans. And I think, as the youngest of the jewelry arts, besides maybe, you know, sintered metal printing and a
Mm.
few other, technologically advanced methods, we're the new kids on the block. And so we have to prove ourselves all over again because, it hasn't been around long enough to have this rich history yet. So I think it's interesting that in a funny way, we are innovating in a field where there haven't been many innovations for quite a long time.
Yeah, well, these are constant innovations happening here. And I'll tell you this, I think it's getting more accepted among um, what were considered traditional metalsmiths, because in the beginning, some of the strength wasn't there. Things were breaking,
Right.
or actually, we weren't firing it high enough. We didn't know any better back then.
Right.
We do, things aren't breaking. And as a moderator, I moderate the Metal Clay and Mixed Medium Forum, but all of the forums are gaining we're gaining members. And it's not because we're so great and wonderful, it's because a lot of people are entering this field now. They
Right.
always said, I'm not going near that stuff. So it's
Right.
exciting on that level to see a lot of new people come in because it they thought that it plateaued at a certain point. That's why a
Sure.
lot of conferences stopped. They said, well, we're seeing the same people at all the company conferences, whatever
Right.
brand is having the conference. And now I think that it's having another growth spurt for sure.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's important to innovate. It's important also to know what the limitations of your medium are. I mean, certainly not a, attempting to do things that are not the best method is
Sure.
always going to be smart. But then again, it's always fun to push the envelope and see what you can and can't get away with. So it'll be cool to see what we all do with this new clay as Project X hits the market and starts getting out to all the different artists for them to get their hands on.
Well, metal clay is not a one size fits all. There's certain
Sure.
things that if I want to make a nice smooth box, if I didn't solder a box together of sheet metal, I'd be an idiot because I'm going against the grain because metal clay wants to be molded or textured or something like that.
Right.
It would just be easier doing it the other way. You
Right.
know, there's many things I think I could say about, well, metal clay is better at doing that. Like when it comes to sculpting, I mean, hands down. Well, I guess you could use wax and things like that, but for me, hands down, that's what I should really
Yes.
say. For me,
Yeah.
hands down, like I could sit here for hours, which again is my problem. But sculpting and creating and things like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the neat thing about it is it's saving steps. I like you tried some of the traditional techniques, and I remember working my brains out on a piece of wax and getting the investment poured and everything else and burning it out, and then it didn't cast correctly, and
mm,
that work was all lost. And I'd much rather, as a metal clay artist, sculpt in metal clay, do the master that way, and then send it out for molding and casting. That way, if they have a problem, they can always go back to my silver original and rip another mold. So there's
yeah,
there's some interesting things that I think with metal clay bridge the gap that otherwise is inherent in some of the other techniques. So
yeah, I think that using it for a casting mode is wonderful because you can see exactly what you're going to get, whereas before
yep,
you're looking at a wax and trying to imagine what it's going to look like in
right.
metal, where this is metal, and yeah, it works out great for that. Totally. Yeah, I think there's a lot of, well, I'm speaking to the choir here, like when, ooh, all the things that metal clay can do. But yeah, I think each brand brings new excitement. And well, I want to know who the metal clay X guy is that does the
His I guess that's 008. Well, Holly, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me and share your experiences with Project X. Um, I do hope you get to make it to some of the upcoming sessions. And, it's always just a pleasure to talk to you and catch up. And, I look forward to hanging out with you and Chris sometime in the near future.
Well, hopefully, yeah. You came down once and we did some artwork together and you cut some cabs. So that'd be nice for you, you
I
know.
would love to.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Sounds very exciting. So I'm wishing them all good luck. Carrie's a smart cookie, so she's a good one to be leading the charge on this. And I'm looking forward to trying the other clays and seeing what they do. Just
Excellent.
do something different, you know.
All right,
But
Holly, thanks so much.
bye.
Bye.